All right, so I am very happy to introduce Karen Dougal. She is one of our TRIO Teacher Prep alumni. She graduated from Boise State in December of 2020 with an elementary TESOL education degree. She is currently teaching first grade at Morley Nelson Elementary School. Then we have Ashley Bates, another TRIO alumni. She graduated in the spring of 2018 with an elementary ed degree, and her endorsement was in English. And this semester, she is graduating with her master's in educational leadership in TESOL and ENL. Currently teaching at Sage Valley Middle School in the Valley View School District, and she's a 7th grade ELA teacher there. Up next, we have Mike Harris, who graduated from Bradley University in Illinois in 2011. And then in August of 2019, he received his master's degree in music education. Currently, he's teaching 6th through 12th grade band at Idaho Arts Charter School in Nampa. This is his 10th year teaching. And if you're interested in some live music, you can check him out. He plays for an indie band called Up to Flynn or at the Canyon County Symphony. And last but not least, we have Nikki Cavallero, who has 20 plus years of experience in the field of education. She is also a Boise State graduate with a secondary ed degree in political science and government. Currently, she is pursuing a master's in counseling. And for the past 5 years, she has been teaching college prep at Capitol High School for the TRIO Upward Bound program. So I like to say round of applause if we were in person. So again, thank you very much for being here today and joining us. So to get us started, our first question, and if I could have Nikki and Mike answer this first question. The question is, how do you define success as a teacher? Are there practices or strategies that you believe set you up for success throughout the academic year?
So I'll go ahead and take that first, Nikki, if you don't mind. So like Adriana said, I teach music. Specifically, I teach band, 6th through 12th grade band. And so for me, the way that I always measure success at the end of the year is if the students choose to return to my class. Kind of an upside. Sorry about the technical issues here. Kind of the upside and the downside is that kids get to choose my class. And so you kind of get a self-selected group, but as everyone probably knows from trying to learn music at one point in time, it's not always the easiest thing. And so I try to really build my class around creating a space where students are successful in learning music so that at the end of the year, they decide to come back because they're ready to get better and play harder stuff next year.
I can appreciate where you're coming from with that, Michael. My current position with TRIO Upward Bound is also, it's an elective class, so they don't have to be in there. And so the fact that they want to come back, but even when I first started teaching, I taught US history, pre and post Civil War US history, taught a little bit of American government, taught a little bit of economics, and success was always that they wanted to be in class. I figured that if they wanted to be there and they were having fun being there, then history's gonna sink in. You know, so I typically have, I have high energy. That's kind of my own personality, but I think that kind of showing your own passion and love, you know, for the kids is what brings them in, and a lot of humor. You know, bringing, I've secondary education, I've always worked with junior high and high school kids, and I think a lot of humor and fun is needed to keep them wanting to be in your class. And I remember, I think it was probably in my second year of teaching, I had a kid come into class and say, "This is the only class I came to today. I skipped all the other ones," and it was juniors. And I'm like, you shouldn't tell me that, but I'm glad that you wanted to be here, you know? So that's definitely success, I think, for my experience. But.
Thank you. And I know both of you are work with the older kiddos. I guess I'm just gonna put it out there for Ashley and Karen. Is there anything else you'd like to add for working with younger students?
I think that my success lies where I feel most successful when my students feel safe and happy in my classroom. And I'm at a Title I school, and a lot of that depends on my classroom management, and it needs to be very routine oriented, and they need to have predictability in my classroom because their lives are total chaos. And so they know that when they can walk into my classroom, that the exact same things are going to happen every day. And if they aren't, they know about it ahead of time. And so that's one of the ways that I am seeing success is they come here and know that they're safe. So.
Yeah, I would say similarly, if they keep telling me stories about stuff outside my classroom, then I know that I'm a safe person for them. And I think just like consistently asking the question is like, is what I'm doing good for kids? And if they keep enjoying my class and they keep connecting with me, then we keep doing it.
Thank you. Our second question is kind of a compound question, and so I think everybody is up for grabs for everybody. The first part may be more relevant to Karen and Ashley, and that part is, what advice would you have for students when they begin searching, applying, and interviewing for jobs in the teaching field? And then the second part of that is, for other teachers who had the opportunity to teach at multiple places, can you speak to the differences in the types of schools that students should consider when looking for work? And that includes charter versus private versus public, teaching at different school districts and different settings, urban, city. So I'll go ahead and let Ashley and Karen go for that one first.
Well, I kind of had like a non-traditional start to my teaching career. My first year I was teaching abroad, teaching English to students in India. And so my like return to applications and interviewing and stuff, the career fair that Boise State, that the College of Ed puts on, that's where I got my job. That's where I met my principal. And I would just say something to keep in mind is you can't know everything in an interview about the place that you're going to be. And I even did like a walkthrough of 2 different middle schools in my district. And I was like, I think this one feels kind of like a better fit for me. And so far it's been good. But I also did my student teaching at a charter school. And I guess the biggest differences there were when I was at the charter school, I had a lot more freedom, me and my mentor teacher, of what we wanted to do in our class. And it was a little bit easier in a smaller school for us to coordinate projects with like the science teacher or the math teacher. But also there are less procedures that are like cemented into like the way that the school works, because we were just one school instead of a district of many schools with a lot of eyes going over what to do for like fire drills and stuff. So more structure at my public school, at my like big school district school, but also a lot more flexibility at the charter school I worked at.
I think for me, I got my job where I am right now because I had worked really hard in my internship and with my professors, and one of my professors heard of a job, a long-term sub position, and knew that I was a good fit there and put a good word in for me. And I took that, even though it was like weeks after graduation and I really wanted a small break. And I did it anyways because I thought it would be really good experience. And they saw who I was, what I was all about, and they liked what they saw. And I ended up getting a job here the next year. So like definitely take opportunities when people when they put your name out there, there's a reason. And so take those opportunities that come. I wish I could remember like all of the questions of like the interview through the district. That's like everybody kind of panics about it, and don't panic about it. Be authentic, because you know who you want to be as an educator. And that's all they want to know at the end of the interview, is that you know who you are. As far as school choice, I knew I wanted to be in the Boise School District, and I knew that I wanted to be elementary. And so knowing those two things obviously crossed some other schools off of my list of places to apply at. But the other thing that some people don't talk about is that it's a little dicey. I didn't get my job until like weeks before school started. And so there's a waiting game, and a lot of movement happens late in the summer. And then you're thrown a classroom a couple weeks before school starts, and you jump and you run. And I think one of the, anyways, and so when you're thinking about applying, just know that, just be patient, it'll happen. And like, stay true to who you are. Don't, I don't know that it's a good time your first year, be really comfortable with what you choose, because it's really hard to learn all of the things you have to do your first year. And if you're not comfortable in the school that you've chosen, that can make it even more challenging. So.
Anything Guy and Michael would like to add to working in different settings?
And just because I have worked in public schools, I've worked in private sector doing various jobs in training, teaching, facilitating. And one of the things that I've also owned my own business and hired people, and been on that side of the interview process. And one of the things that I would say is you should be interviewing them just as much as they are interviewing you. It is really important that you go in and you ask questions, and you ask about, what it looks like to be successful in that environment, and what qualities, they're looking for in teachers, and what support systems are available. Because you're going to be so much more successful if you find that right fit. And I would say explore anything and everything. Just because you apply for a job and interview for a job and are even offered a job doesn't mean you have to take it. So that is part of the process, is, get in there and, check it out and decide whether or not it's the right fit for you too.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback real quick off of something that Nikki said. You absolutely should be interviewing your principal, your superintendent, your cooperating teacher, whoever is holding the interview for you. Private schools are not inherently better than public, and charter schools are not inherently better than public schools. There's no real innate hierarchy. What you do find is you find some schools have really great communication between administrators and teachers and parents and students. And so when you're looking like for a job and you're thinking about kind of like what Nikki said, where you want to interview the people that's interviewing you, talk a lot about communication, because the best schools are the schools that have the best communication. The ones that you want to avoid are the ones where things do not get communicated very well between those different stakeholders.
Awesome, thank you. Hope everybody's taking notes. Great bits of information. All right, so our next question is, what do you know now that you wish you knew at the beginning of your very first year of teaching? If you can recall back to that first year, and maybe Ash and Karen, it might be a bit fresher in your minds.
I think what I wish I could go back and tell myself is just that it's okay. Like, you didn't grade those papers very fast, it's okay. Like, kids were out of control today, you can try again tomorrow. And also you can try again next year. And also I think something important that first year me should have known was, if you teach something wrong on accident, it's not going to ruin this kid. It's not going to ruin this group of kids. Or if you say something that then the next day you're like, ooh, I wish I wouldn't have said that. You can apologize. And again, it's not going to ruin the students. They're in school for 13 years. Don't give yourself too much power over the destruction that you might be bringing to someone. As long as you're just, authentic and compassionate, it's okay.
I was thinking about this last night as I realized I needed to do my planning and get things together for the next day. I think the hardest part about your first year is that you are learning all the aspects of your job while 20 kids look at you for an engaging lesson. They're like, and so what's today, Mrs. Dougal? And I'm like, hold on a second. I'm just figuring out that I need to do something a different way with a different student, or there's students coming in crying and all those kind of things. Like, it's like a lot of mild chaos all the time. Like, you need to give yourself some grace because it's going to take you a while. And maybe I'm just slow or like super thorough, but like I plan a couple hours a night. Like, I go home, I eat dinner, and I'm right back to it. And I get my planning done for the next day. On the weekends, I try to get, I probably spend like 6 hours on the weekend trying to get everything just kind of laid out. So like a loose plan, and then I'm cleaning up and pulling it in tighter. I'm one of those teachers that you can plan all you want, but that day that lesson doesn't go that well, you've got to pick it up the next, and then it ruins your whole entire lesson plans. You can't plan too far out either. So giving yourself that flexibility. And then like, just remember that when you are in your first year, there's mentors everywhere. Your school gives you a mentor. You have like the mentor program through, if you're in the Boise School District, like there's this whole induction program, and there's people that are checking in on you monthly. And then you've got your teaching team here. Like, knowing that you've got people behind you was really valuable for me. And going to your team and saying, hey, I've never taught this before, have any ideas? Or have we done something like this before? Those are all huge. So ask questions. And when someone says, hey, do you want a copy of this? The answer is always yes. Always yes. It will save you time. So.
Actually, to piggyback on that comment, there's another question that I'm hoping we talk a little bit about, and it's building relationships across, with students, with parents, with fellow teachers, with administrators. Do you have tips for how to have those conversations, how to navigate that, the school climate, and build those relationships for your success? I will throw that to everybody.
I can jump in. Sorry, I just felt like I was talking, but I do not have a microwave and I do not have a refrigerator in my classroom, so that I have to go to the break room and talk to people that I work with. Because it's really easy. You just you get sucked into the black hole of your classroom and you don't head out. And so I have a friend that I only see in the workroom, and every day we catch up and see how we're doing. It's the only time I see her the entire day. It's because we're lunchroom buddies. So that was one of my techniques to get myself out of the classroom. And when you have a smile on your face and you're welcoming, students learn your name. They've never even been in your class, but they get to know you. And people are always saying, oh, hey, Mrs. Dougal. And I'm like, oh, hey, I have no idea who they are. But when you're there and they know that you're a safe person, those relationships and that rapport is like getting built, and it's just this amazing thing to watch. And so don't stay in your classroom too much, because don't worry, you're never going to get it all done.
I think at the beginning of my career, I was really focused in on trying to use every single moment with students to do a musical activity. And I found that a good pizza party, or a good day of playing Mafia, or a good day of playing Two Truths and a Lie, not only does it break up the monotony of school, but it opens up the kids so that they can be a little bit more human and share things with you that you might not have noticed. Like, you have the pizza party and everyone says they're going to bring something, but a kid can't bring soda. well, that probably tells you something about how you can help support them the next time they need to bring something. Or if you're playing a game of Mafia and there's two kids that are ganging up on another kid the whole time, well, that can tell you some information too. And so I think that one of the ways that I like to build relationships with students is just kind of throw the music out the window for a day and have a good party day, or break out a video game or watch cat videos on YouTube, and just kind of let them be kids for a little bit instead of little tiny scholars.
I recently was started doing something similar because one of my colleagues said, like, I have to start doing more fun stuff in my class. So I want to keep coming back to my class. And I started playing computer games, whatever game was about to get blocked because kids were playing it on their Chromebooks when they were supposed to be doing assignments. I started playing them with them, and we would like be on a server together, all playing some silly game. And it was like just money in the bank, because then all the kids were like, Miss Bates is so cool. And then they were really excited about the book we were reading the next day.
I think I have certainly an advantage right now with the position that I'm in on not having a set curriculum that I have to teach to, but just reaching objectives. So I get to enter in all kinds of stuff in my classroom with students to be able to connect and build relationships. But definitely had more of a challenge in my current role in connecting with other teachers. When I first started this position, I was in 2 different high schools, and I was like on the run always. But recently, in the last couple of years, I've just primarily been at Capitol and the schools that feed into it. And I have, joined the committee that's planning the academic assembly, and joined the social planning committee. And, I'm not technically an employee at that school, but in order to build relationships and connect with people, sometimes it takes that extra, give up your lunch hour and go to that meeting and connect with other teachers. I try and every year introduce myself to all of my students, other teachers, as a resource and connection, and just build the relationships with the students that we have in common. And it has been really helpful in establishing, a presence within the faculty and administration. Definitely connect really well with your counselors, because your counselors are going to be your helpers when, for sure, when you have challenging situations or, need that additional assistance. But I think that, I've built relationships with the counselors, and that was a big reason why I wanted to do the Master's in Counseling program, is, because there's great work that they're doing as well. So.
Thank you. So pivoting to a slightly different topic here, to talk about professional development and leadership opportunities. What type of experiences have you had as a teacher that you feel have been instrumental in your own development? How have you been connected to those opportunities? Financially, what kind of support has been available? And professional experiences can include, but are not limited to, graduate degrees, leadership training, involvement with organizations such as AVID, Gear Up, or TRIO, teaching abroad, or professional organization memberships. And I know all of you had experience with this. So again, I don't want to put anyone, I just want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to share the ways that you've been involved with those opportunities. So I will call on Ashley, or I think Karen was unmuted.
It's totally fine. This year, like after the pandemic, teachers have said it's not normally like this, but there's like been a deluge of professional development. And like every time you turn around, somebody's offering you a book study with credit and all sorts of things. And I will tell you that some of them are valuable and some of them might not add value to your life. And so choose carefully, and it's okay if your school's not requiring it, it's okay to say no. It's okay to like walk by book club, and it's okay. The other thing to know, like that first year, you're going to have like a 3-credit course with that induction through Boise School District if you work with them. And you're going to have monthly meetings, you're going to have a book to read and things like that. So there's professional development all the time. It's everywhere. It's like they pass it out a lot. So some of the things that I've tried to pick things that I like the math facts class that I'm taking right now. And that was something like that's going to really help me in my classroom, things like that. So choose what you really, really want to involve yourself in, and be okay when you don't.
Yeah, I would have similar advice that if there's something out there that's interesting and you have, like the capacity to participate, do it. Like I was not planning ever until like right before I applied to teach abroad. But if some opportunity like that comes up, oh my gosh, take it. Because for me, that was pivotal for my development as a person, but also as a teacher. I think I would have been a totally different teacher if I hadn't spent time seeing the US from someone else's perspective and understanding, I think, kids just better by being like, oh, wow, all kids kind of are the same in a lot of ways. And also, like, on that same note, things that if they don't fit your like plan, but you're interested, follow that interest, because the same thing kind of happened with the master's program that I'm in. I wasn't like super excited about doing TESOL or ENL, but there was a Boise State grant that was like, hey, get your ENL endorsement for free. And I was like, well, it'll help me be a better teacher, so I guess I'll do it. And then I decided to finish the master's. And so I wasn't planning on like having a master's so soon, but here I am. And it really just is, I don't know, taking opportunities when you can and when you want to, and not sticking to this rigidity of like, well, this is the path that I have and I have to stay on it. It's okay to veer off a little.
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback off what Ashley said about just kind of like broadening your horizons. My master's program had very, 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 very little to do with music. It had very, 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 very little to do with education. It really ended up kind of just being this soul searching couple of summers for me, where I started to realize how much of my own life experience I'm projecting out into the world. Not purposefully. We all do it. We all have our lenses that we see the world, and our solutions to problems. And so I think that any kind of PD that you can stumble into that challenges how you solve problems or challenges how you see the world gives you more tools to work with students. I'm never going to have a class full of only straight cisgender white men. And in that case, I need to know how to talk to women. I need to know how to talk to people of different racial backgrounds or different religions or different, problem solving skills. Like I'm a type A band nerd. I need to understand how the art kid who's type B and draws on the walls works. And so any kind of PD that you can get that like expands your worldview, I think, even if it's not about education or your content field, it'll make you a better teacher in the long run.
Ditto to all of those things for sure. I'm a believer in continuous improvement. I don't pass up very many opportunities, but that also creates stress in my life because I tend to overload a bit, but absolutely agree that your development can look totally unique to you. And as long as you continue to look at opportunities for expanding, you're in good shape. But there's lots of opportunities, and it's not always traditional continuing education courses that are offered to every teacher every summer, so there's lots of different opportunities.
Great. I mean, I actually do think this is the first time during a panel discussion that teachers have said there's just so much. And definitely I think it's tied to the current situation. So that's good to have options and pick and choose what fits your needs. So our next question is, one of the many roles of teachers include supporting the mental health of students in their classroom and school. However, we don't often hear discussions regarding the mental health and emotional well-being of teachers themselves. And this neglect has contributed to two major issues in the field of education. One is a burnout of teachers and a shortage of skilled teachers. How have you made your well-being a priority? What would you recommend to new teachers that they do to build longevity in this profession?
I have no problem jumping in on this one first.
Go for it.
I mean, mental health is a real issue with a lot of our students and with ourselves. And I didn't do a lot about it specifically until recently, but the vicarious trauma that I was experiencing became real and in my face. And I got a therapist that I see on a regular basis, and to help me process some of the stuff that I'm working through with students, and to kind of remind me to take care of myself. I think that's going to look different for each person, but I think it's really important that you're paying attention to what you need, and again, setting boundaries and being able to say no when you need to, and to turn it off when you need to. It becomes really easy to just get wrapped up and work 60, 70, 80 hours a week and be emotionally involved with it. But outlet to process, I'm a firm believer that counseling is for everyone, and that everyone can benefit from counseling, and yeah, to build some boundaries in for yourself. Really important.
Some good advice that it worked for me that I was given right before I started teaching was someone saying, like, I never bring work home. And I was like, well, that seems impossible. But what I ended up doing in my first year was, since I didn't have anyone depending on me, I had the flexibility. I just stayed at school until I was done working for the night. So I never ever graded papers at home. I never did lesson planning at home. And that helped me to keep things separate, so that when I got home, I could be like, okay, I don't have to be working in my head all night. And the good thing is, in my first year, when I was staying till 6 or 7 on a lot of nights, I don't have to do that anymore, because a lot of that planning was done a year or two ago. And so now I can often leave at the end of contract time. And this is only my 3rd year at this school. So it does get easier. But I think, yeah, just like what Nikki said, having someone or some people who are either some good listeners or give you some advice when you ask for it is really good. Something that my therapist told me, which I haven't done yet, so I'm just passing that along to you. Having a hobby, something that is part of who you are, that's not just your job. Because I think this year, what's been really hard, and the burnout for me that I've been fighting is my job is so hard, and sometimes I don't like it all the time. And so, like, am I having an identity crisis like every day because being the biggest part of who I am is like challenging me? So being able to separate that sometimes and being like, I am a teacher, but that's just part of me. It's not every fiber of me. I can take a break sometimes is an important boundary for me to have.
Thank you. Yes, I agree, Nikki. To pivot off of that, sorry, that feels like such a big jump next. What do you believe are some of the most important qualities that a teacher would want to cultivate throughout their career? And I think I'll go ahead and ask Karen and Michael to go for that one.
Okay, I think to be like a trusted source of kindness and empathy. You have to understand where your students are coming from. You have to meet them there. You want them up here, and by showing you care about them, they can get there. But setting these high expectations without any understanding and empathy will get you nowhere, and the student will not meet you where they need to be. You know, I like the reality of teaching is interesting. I have a brand new student from Afghanistan. His school was taken over by the Taliban, and he's gotten here to this country, right? And so he's like in my class maybe a week after being in a brand new country, doesn't speak the language. And he gets up from the desk and just is looking out the window. And I'm like, that's fine. He's in a building, he's safe, and he just wants to see like what the world can be. What can the world really be in a safe and happy place? And so making those adjustments to and like reading your students and portraying the qualities that you hope for in your students as a teacher. So when you have to stop and say, and talk about empathy, or when Ashley's talking about like making mistakes, we have a saying in my class, like when we make mistakes, it's cool. And everybody goes, hey, it's cool. It's cool, because you want them to buy into that. They're being willing to make mistakes in the classroom. And so I think part of being like that, those qualities, whatever you want to see in your students, you have to be first.
Yeah, I think my answer is going to sound a lot like what you just said. And I think it's kind of like in two different parts. Like your classroom is going to be a reflection of you. And so make sure that you like what you're going to reflect. And if you don't like what you're going to reflect, be willing to change and address and adjust and meet the kids where you want them to be reflecting you. I think the other side of it is just being very consistent with expectations, very consistent with like due dates and assignments and behaviors and repercussions and discipline and communication. Because I don't really think you need to be a master of your subject to be a great teacher. You just have to be consistent and reliable, and the expectations can't change. They have to be the same. And then you also just have to be able to break up a big problem into tiny little pieces that people can understand while still keeping that big picture in mind. And so for me, that comes down to like score study. I have to know what John Philip Sousa's march is going to sound like before I can teach the kids. But I also have to know what issues they're going to have in measure 22 in the third clarinet part on the sixth note in the measure. And so you have to be able to have like a big picture view of where the class is going, but be able to break it down into pieces and then be consistent when you feed out those pieces and expect to measure their attitudes. And then you also just have to be prepared. Your classroom is going to look like you. So make sure that what you are reflecting is something you want to see.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm looking at the clock. So I think the last question that I'll leave so that students have an opportunity to ask their questions will be, what does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you in your role as an educator? And I'd like to open that up to everybody.
In the light of what's kind of just been going on in our country right now, what I would say is, as concerned as a lot of adults seem to be about what those words mean, the kids are ready for it. They're hungry for it. Every time I feel like nervous that someone's going to send me an angry email. My kids are eating it up because they are really ready for anytime I say something like, hey, let's try to have some more diverse stories in our ELA curriculum. They're like, yeah, we shouldn't read stories that are all about the same type of people. That totally makes sense. And they're like, come on, Miss Bates, like what are you waiting for? And so I think really just being open to your students and seeing who they are and making sure that they see themselves represented appropriately in your classroom and that they are given opportunities or you are modeling what those things look like, what diversity and well, really what inclusion looks like, and being able to bring your students' stories and your students' cultures and your students' heritage into the curriculum whenever possible is so rewarding. It takes a little bit more work because you have to really know the students and know the community. So rewarding though. As part of my coursework, I was doing a lot of translanguaging. So we were reading our novel in Spanish and English, which only like a third of my kids know Spanish, but they were ready to teach everyone in the classroom. And it was a community builder. They learned the narrative concepts. They were able to write about the comprehension of the story, and everyone was able to be exposed to something new. So keep trying. The kids are excited and it's going to be okay.
It's really interesting. I really found this whole area, my eyes were like widely opened with this at the college, at BSU. Some of the courses were really good. That had me question about who I was and what I thought about this. And when I got to the school I was working at last year, they had this bike rodeo. And when I realized that 75% of my class cannot get a bike to school to do the bike rodeo, I reach out to the principal and say, hey, can we bring scooters? And she's like, oh, that's a great idea. Then I realized that 25% of my class still doesn't have a scooter. So it's not equitable. Not everybody is included here. And so I round up extra scooters. And when we get to the bike rodeo and we have enough of things for everybody to ride, I realized that 2 of my students had sandals on and they needed closed-toe shoes. So I stood barefoot while they took my shoes around the track on the scooters to make sure everybody could do it. And so I think this whole idea of modeling what inclusion looks like and knowing that their teacher is willing to go out of her way to make sure every single person's included. We do that with birthday invitations. If you're going to have a birthday party, you got to invite everybody in the class. There's no like picking and choosing. And those are the things that like in my little first grade world here, that's what diversity and inclusion look like, and equity. Also being really careful about how I design assessments as well. You cannot put questions in assessments and tests about things that don't apply to students in your demographic. So you have to be really careful there too. So
I'll keep it short because I know that we want to leave time for questions, but Ashley, right at the end, you said just keep trying. And I want to emphasize that because I think that when I think about, I am so glad that Boise State now has classes that make you think about these things because they didn't in my day. But I think it's a matter of just continuing to look inwardly of where you are, what biases you may have, how can you learn, how can you look at each individual student and meet them where they are and learn more about them as an individual and their background, and just be humble because you don't know, you can't, there's no way that any one person could know everything about diversity and inclusivity. They've got to, they just have to keep trying. So.
Any last thoughts on that, Michael?
It's a lot of work. It is absolutely the part of my job that takes more work than I think anything else, but it also is the most meaningful work, because when you include a child in a way that they're not used to being included, their whole world changes. And the opposite happens too. If you exclude a child a way that they're used to being excluded, their whole world changes also in a kind of negative way. And so trying to figure out different ways to teach students, different ways to collect assessment data, different ways to interact with them, it takes up more time than anything else I do. But it also is probably the most important thing that I do put into my prep and planning for a lesson.
Excellent. Wow. Well, that I really actually love that. That was the last question that we're gonna wrap up with. Thank you so much for your insights and your willingness to share and being vulnerable and authentic during this discussion. I guess at this point, are there questions, burning questions that students want to ask? This is your chance. So you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you have questions for our panelists. Any brave souls?
I wanted to ask, I'm not going into teaching itself. I'm looking at working one-on-one with a student, so more as a paraprofessional or a habilitative interventionalist, those types of interventions. So all the questions that you have answered, basically, how would that apply to a paraprofessional? Would it be in the same aspects because they are in the classroom? If they are working at a public school or a private school, would they be kind of along the lines of a teacher, same type of curriculums and working with the students, or is it totally different?
I can't say enough about my paraprofessionals that I get to have in my classroom. You have a really important job on your hands. And I have some that work with my intervention groups for reading, for math. I, as the teacher, kind of direct what those paraprofessionals are doing in those groups. Sometimes there's other teachers that prefer that the paraprofessionals work on those kind of things and prepare things and give them a loose plan of like, hey, let's kind of head this direction. Your job is a hard one. I appreciate the paraprofessionals because they get pulled a lot to do a lot of different things at the school. When there's a teacher that calls in and no sub for them, they get pulled to sub. And so I am so grateful that I get to have paraprofessionals in my classroom. And so your job is like that same level where the students are going to love you. They're going to work with you, and you need to know exactly who they are so that you can build that same rapport with them, because the learning is happening with you each and every day. Small windows, but those small windows are like big learning chunks for them. And so your job's really going to be valuable, and you're respected in a child's eyes. You're respected just like a teacher. And we respect you as teachers too. We appreciate all that our paraprofessionals do.
The other question that I have as well is, do you also bring home a lot of work like teachers do? I'm assuming that you probably don't because you're basically in the classroom helping, but what parts, I mean, are the curriculums already provided, or do you have to help the teacher create them? What kind of, I guess, does the job entail? And also, how do you get into it? Do you have to apply just like a teacher or get your foot in the door? How does that work?
I've not been a paraprofessional before. My mom has been for like the last 15 years, and she's worked at a couple different schools, and I would say, and with a couple different teachers in those schools. And I really think it depends on who is overseeing the SPED department, and then also which classroom teacher she's working with. Sometimes, because my mom really likes doing this kind of stuff, she like does craft things for all of the students or just the students she works with, and brings them into school. Sometimes teachers expect her to plan things. I know that sometimes teachers give my mom stuff and then she says, this is not meeting my students' goals, so I'm going to do something different. I think also too, like, the application process varies district by district or school by school, but it's, I think, usually pretty straightforward. I mean, I don't know, a similar process to applying to the teaching pool. I'm pretty sure there's a pool also for paraprofessionals and other support or classified positions. But I really think that, kind of like what's already been said, it's varied depending on the day and depending on which students you're working with or what adults you're working with. But a super, super important position.
I'm going to jump in here with a quick question, and thank you all so much for everything. I've learned a lot today. And this question, I think, is more for Ashley, who I believe, if I remember correctly, was part of the substitute. Was that you, Ashley, or was that you, Karen? Karen, okay. Then the question's, I guess, directed for you. I am signing on to be a substitute for the Boise School District. Never been a sub before, I've never been a teacher before. I was homeschooled. I've never been in the classroom before. So what should I expect?
Subbing is a hard job because you come in and you're a fresh face, and you don't have that rapport with the students. If you're there for longer than a day, you will, trust me, they cling on real fast, and it's awesome. A lot of one of the ways that you can help yourself is to be pretty digital savvy. Like, all of my lesson plans are on Google Drive. I can send them to my substitutes ahead of time. They need to be able to log into my computer using their Boise School District thing. Like, I had a sub that didn't know how to do that, and we were scrambling as, like, my team's trying to help them out. And so knowing like the computer systems and knowing how to work when I cannot see your face, listen, I'm not going to judge how old you are. So anyways, knowing how to use kind of like the digital interfaces it's like we use it a lot in our classrooms. And so just knowing how to navigate that. And then teachers really, really appreciate the plan being followed. And so we really like it a lot. And so you're going to get set up with plans that are pretty decent. Mine are extensive and probably over the top, but all the subs I have are like, oh my gosh, thank you for like spelling this out, because I didn't have to worry I wasn't, like forgetting something or not doing it. So I think that you're doing a great thing to get into the classroom and get your feet wet to see how it feels and what you like and what you don't. The really cool thing about subbing is that you can see what teachers are doing, what you like, and what is totally failing that they may not realize. And so it's going to clean up your teaching in the future. So nice job. And we're going to appreciate you when you hit the sub pool.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
All right. So it's 5:29. One last question.
Can I
Go
go?
ahead, Leslie. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm an elementary education major, so it's just kind of, I guess, to whoever wants to answer. But is there any additional resources that can help you with lesson planning?
There's a lot of resources out there. Sorry, Ashley, you had an idea. I like unmuted a second and I was like, oh no, I should stop. The one thing that I really like about lesson planning is I put everything on slides. So I've got like a Google slide deck, and I make like one for every day of the week where it's all kind of built out. And it keeps me on pace. It's super easy to hand to a sub. The kids like rely on it and they see what's coming next. And so I would say to maybe find some teachers or, like if you end up with a mentor that uses that kind of method, test it out, see if you like it when you're doing your internship. That was my thought. I really like that my mentor teacher had. So
Yeah, I think, like Karen said, ask everyone around you what their template system is, because then you'll get a foundation for what works best for you. And sometimes I can't work with the same thing every single time, and so I use something different for a different kind of lesson. But there are also just like almost too many resources for like supplemental stuff. Like lately, my kids have been using a lot of vocabulary. If you have never used that, oh my gosh, you gotta go check it out. You can get like a free trial or something if your district doesn't have it. But there are so many cool resources out there, and I would definitely check the list of whatever your district's subscriptions are, because no one told me about what those were, and then I just like stumbled upon them sometimes, and I was like, how come no one told me? Like, this is making my life so much easier. So look at what's available and see what you can use from there. Take or toss sort of situation.
Do you know where I can find that? So I'm currently an intern at the Boise School District. Do you know where I can find that?
Erin might know, because she's in there.
are you talking about vocabulary? Because I've never heard of that. So that's something I'm going to check out after we're done. Is that what you're talking about, Leslie?
Just the different like resources, the ones that Ashley was saying, how to check what resources the district has, if I got that right.
Oh yeah. It should, like some of them, and I don't know if they appear like on the My Apps already for you, but when you like log into your Boise School District page, it's like your My Apps page and it has like all of the things. You can go to like add and there's like a bunch of apps there. Just realize too that like it feels like there's going to be all of this time to plan for, and then you're gonna like get your schedule and realize you don't have that much time to plan for. So like take a deep breath and know that it's going to be okay. And that there's a lot of, the other thing to know, Leslie, is that there's a lot of apps that we are required to use for specific times during the day. Like we have to use iReady and we're supposed to use it 45 minutes a week. And so then that like eats up little chunks of math, and like we're supposed to be on Imagine Learning. And so that eats up some of our reading time. And so some of that stuff is already laid out for you. So like really like just letting it kind of fall into place before you get too worked up about it. Like just knowing there's a lot to cover already, and that's already kind of like in place. We just like, I didn't know about it until you show up.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, I don't know if you're checking the chat, but everybody's signing off. And so it is 5:34. So I, once again, thank you for being here and talking to our students. Like I said, this is always such a wonderful event for students. And this is the first year that I think we actually recorded it. So kudos to us, so that students that actually reached out and said couldn't be here will be able to watch it. So thanks a million. We appreciate all the work that you do. And I don't know if Melissa wants to say anything else. I'm just very thankful.
Yeah, just to echo that, I think that you guys hit on a lot of great topics for students to be thinking about as they're finishing up school or kind of in the middle of school and starting student teaching and thinking about where they're going to end up. So thank you for all of your insight.
All right. All right.
It was fun.
So,
it was nice meeting the rest of the panel. Thank you.
all right. And that's a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you all. This really
Thank
helped.
you.
Good to see you.
Likewise, I'll see you before I graduate.
Okay.